Not every candy cane was meant to be eaten. Somewhere between tradition and excess, between joy and obligation, something started to crack. Born from too much sweetness, too much expectation, and an overload of festive energy that had nowhere left to go. Not violently, quietly. This is Peppermint Flux. Hey, I'm Toby. Today I'm building a diorama about something that feels familiar. When something good turns into too much. This piece might look aggressive at first, it isn't. It's about pressure. I'm starting with a simple wire armature, just a rough shape and poster. Peppermint Flux isn't rage, it's pressure. The kind that builds up when something is forced to stay sweet, bright and festive, long after it's already too much. Next, I cover the wire with polymer clay and begin shaping the creature. I'm not trying to make it scary on purpose, but it has to look wrong in a familiar way. Like something that started as a decoration and quietly turned into a problem no one wanted to deal with. Peppermint Flux isn't evil. It isn't angry. It's an accident. What looks like rage is actually collapse. A body that can't contain itself anymore. As I build up the mouth and face, it might look aggressive at first, but it's not anger. It's an expression you get when a body is overloaded and has nowhere left to put what's inside. Next I add the eyes and the teeth. Up until now, it was just a shape, a form. With the eyes in place, it starts to feel aware. This is usually the point where a figure changes from an object into something else. Peppermint Flux is the physical response to excess. To indulgence without pause, to traditions repeated until meaning dissolves. What was once comforting becomes heavy. What was once joyful becomes obligation, and even things meant to be harmless begin to fail under the pressure. The creature does not act out of cruelty, it reacts. At some point, a fly decides to land right on the Peppermint Flux. I try to catch it, I don't. Apparently, even insects are curious. I continue. It's winter, and for a brief moment I wonder why there are still flies around. Next, I sculpt the hands, each finger one by one. This is usually the moment where I realize how large my own hands are compared to what I'm working on. It's less sculpting and more convincing my fingers to behave. Hands say a lot about character, mostly because they take the longest to get right, mine included. I wanted to feel exhausted. Like something that didn't choose to exist, but had to keep going anyway. The familiar candy cane stripes stay, but the shape slowly feels wrong. Once the hands are finished, I bake them in the oven. To fully harden the clay. After that, I attach them to the prepared arms. A few final stripes, small adjustments, nothing dramatic. At this point, the character is complete. To smooth the polymer clay and remove fingerprints, I use a bit of alcohol. It softens the surface just enough to blend everything together. No pressure, no rushing. Small steps like this make the difference later on. Here I sculpt the tongue. It's a simple shape at first, long, heavy, slightly uneven. I don't try to make it perfect. This tongue shouldn't look controlled. It should feel organic, almost uncomfortable. This part is important. The tongue isn't just a detail, it becomes the path for what comes next. I start by priming the entire figure. It's the moment where everything becomes one surface. No details yet, just potential. Like resetting something before pretending it's fine again. I paint the inside of the mouth black first. It creates depth, but it also turns the inside into a void. Then I paint the body red and white, alternating the stripes like a classic candy cane. Familiar, festive, comforting. The kind of pattern you're not supposed to question, but the more layers I add, the more it feels like a uniform. Something that forces cheerfulness even when the shape underneath has already changed. Next come the eyes and teeth. I keep them slightly yellowed, not rotten, just tired. Like something that's been smiling far too long. Finally, I add the pupil and the iris. This is where it becomes aware, not evil, not plotting. Just conscious enough to realize that it can't go back to being a decoration. And that's usually the moment when things start leaking. Next, I paint the tongue. I keep it very flashy and saturated, not subtle, not muted, because this part won't stay visible for long. Later on, the flux and the candy will cover most of it anyway. What you're seeing now is the last moment before it gets overwhelmed. I built the base and the wall using foam. I shaped both the same way, carving, pressing, damaging the surface with simple tools. Nothing precise, nothing clean. The wall isn't meant to stand straight. It's old, uneven, slightly leaning, not because it's about to fall, but because it's been standing here for too long. The ground gets the same treatment, broken up, worn down. Like a place that's been walked over again and again, slowly losing its original shape. This environment wasn't destroyed in a moment, it was shaped by repetition, by being used, repaired, and ignored over and over. Nothing here is dramatic, it's just tired. I paint the wall in a dark gray, the ground almost black. At first, everything looks flat, heavy, like it absorbs the light. Before moving on, I make a small recess underneath the base for the battery pack. It stays completely hidden, out of sight, easy to access. I like when practical things don't interrupt the illusion. To bring the details back, I add highlights by dry brushing both surfaces. At this point, I briefly wonder why I'm even keeping bent rusty nails. And then I remember, moments like this are exactly the reason. The nails aren't straight, they aren't clean, they don't belong to anything new, they hold the lights in place, barely. But that's enough. Next I start adding moss to the ground and the wall. I glue it in place using a simple mix of wood glue, water and a small drop of dish soap. Nothing fancy, just enough to let it flow into the cracks. I focus on the stones of the wall, letting the moss settle where moisture would naturally collect. Then I carefully soak up the excess. After that, I mix more wood glue and water, this time adding decorative plastic snow and fine mottled snow from woodland scenics. I apply it slowly with a brush, letting it settle naturally instead of forcing it into place. The snow isn't clean or perfect, it sits on top of everything, trying to soften the scene, trying to hide what's underneath. It doesn't fix anything, it just makes it quieter. Next, I start sculpting the candy using colorful polymer clay, lollipops, hard candy, and far too many candy canes. This part was easily the most fun. Bright colors, simple shades, no restraint. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about moderation. It turned into a small sugar rush, minus the sugar. Each piece on its own looks harmless, cheerful even. But together, they start to feel heavy, overwhelming. This is where the joy stops being light. Not because it's bad, but because there's simply too much of it. Sculpting the candy canes was great. It's actually very simple. Just some colors, rolled together and gently twisted. No special tools, no complicated steps. It's one of those parts where you can just relax and let your hands do the work. And suddenly, you have way more candy canes than you planned. This feels excessive. Now I place the figure onto the base. This is where everything finally comes together. The environment stops being a backdrop and starts reacting to what's inside it. For the lollipops, I use simple wooden skewers. I paint them black so they blend into the scene and don't draw attention to themselves. It's a small detail, but details like this keep the illusion intact. If something shouldn't stand out, it usually means it still matters. I'm using UV resin mixed with special resin colors and fluorescent pigments. And where it touches the surface, things begin to change. I apply it slowly with a wooden stick, letting it build up layer by layer. The flux isn't poured, it's guided. It doesn't rush out, it creeps forward, following gravity, finding its own way. This isn't an explosion, it's a release, a body letting go of something it carried for too long. Nothing here is violent, nothing is attacking anything else. The pressure simply had nowhere left to go. This is Peppermint Flux, a small scene built from familiar things: candy, snow, decoration, pushed just a little too far. The flux spreads across the ground, dissolving the snow, staining the surface. Not as destruction, but as evidence. Evidence that joy can become heavy, that celebration can turn into obligation, that even the sweetest things can overwhelm themselves. Peppermint Flux stands for overload, oversaturation. Things that were meant to feel warm, slowly becoming too much. Not because they're bad, but because they never stopped. Thanks for watching. This piece is called Peppermint Flux. It's about overload, not anger, but things that were meant to be joyful, slowly becoming too much. If you enjoy builds like this, sitting somewhere between story and craft, feel free to stick around. There's always another idea waiting to be built, and sometimes it leaks.